a sinister mastermind, a mad scientist, a clever malefactor. All these names and more mean evil genius. Today, we're looking at a game that specializes in evil geniuses. Now, we all know about the hero's journey, from a simple farmer to a hero of the entire galaxy. But what about the bad guy, the villain, the criminal, the malefactor, if you will? Well, in Evil Genius 2, he definitely gets one. Settle in, buckle up, and get ready to go on board. Let's just say different type of adventure. First off, I would like to say I'm starting this review as a kind of an outsider to this genre. I have not played any layer builder or basement managing sims before this game, but afterwards I went back and played a game called Dungeons 3. It's not Dungeon Keeper, but it's similar to that. I have not played Dungeon Keeper 1 or 2, but I did go back and I played Evil Genius 1. I played Evil Genius 1 after playing this game. And I could probably give a review on that, but let's focus on Evil Genius 2. Also, I have not played anything from Reballion Interactive, the company that both developed and published this game. That being said, Evil Genius 2 was a great first impression for this genre, and I enjoyed playing this game. In fact, after 300 hours of playtime with this game, I am now a fan of the layer builder, base builder genre, because I had so much fun, I got so immersed into it. I lost track of time with this game. If that's not high praise for this game, then I don't know what it is. I'm letting you all know that right now, because it does color my opinion of the game a bit. This is my first time, and I really enjoyed my experience, but it could just be that I found a new type of game or a new genre of game, and I'm just sort of like embracing it, and I'm getting into it, sort of figuring it out. But it could also mean that the game's pretty good. It's also a good entry level into this genre of game. Let's find out some more about it, shall we?
Is attempting to become an evil genius.
So let's give a brief history on the Evil Genius franchise. First up, let's talk about Evil Genius 1. It was developed by Elixir Studios and published by Sierra Entertainment. It was released in 2004, which feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it? It was inspired by the spy-fi thrillers of the 60s and 70s era, most prominent being James Bond, and it was similar to what Dungeon Keeper was doing at the time as well. Dungeon Keeper was a layer builder as well, and unfortunately, it's in the hands of EA. Great evil. So anyway, it's basically about building your layer, training your minions, etc., etc. It's a much more slower paced game, a much more less action-packed game, a much more methodical type game than I'm used to playing. All that combined, plus its cartoony visuals, made it a cult classic. And now, after all these years, in 2021, they finally dropped a new one, Evil Genius 2, or Domination, by Reballion Interactive. They're best known for Sniper Elite games and various other action-oriented video games. So the question is, can they step into the layer builder, base building genre and pull off at the very least, a decent game? And I think they pulled it off relatively well. The storyline in Evil Genius 2, as I've already mentioned, is a unique one as you play the bad guy in this game. It picks up years after the first Evil Genius had gone missing after taking over the world successfully. The forces of justice, the name of the good guys in this game, come from various countries. They sort of like various countries form these power blocks, and they have basically overall 6 if you include the DLC. An example would be Patriot, which is formed from North America, and then there's Hammer, which is made up from Eastern and Western Europe. And it adds an interesting layer of complexity to the gameplay, which we'll get into later. But suffice to say, it's incredibly powerful power blocks that can pretty much overwhelm you if you're not careful in the game. Throughout the game, they will send various agents to your lair with various goals, mostly involving showing up and slowing down your progress in the world map in some way. Of course, each evil genius has their own personal storyline in the game that you can explore. I don't want to spoil too much. Say that each one of them feels a little bit unique from the other, but nothing that really stood out in my mind. Let's head into presentation next. Graphic design, to be more specific. The style they went with was something out of the movie Incredibles. It's over the top and colorful. A good combination. The various characters, the various specialties of each character in the game can be seen, such as the muscle minions looking brawny and big and strong, and the science minions looking thinner and more wayfish, and the enemy agents, they look like that, like the soldier units look as buff as the muscle minions, and the investigators, they look skinny and like they're trying to hide from the cameras and disappear between the movements. All the character designs look interesting, they look well done, they make it simple for the player to identify who's who and what's going on. And that being said, the design of the base itself looks pretty good too. There's some nice combinations of coloring, angular. It looks like it. I'm not like an expert with graphic design, but I do know what good graphics design looks like, and this looks like good graphics design. The base looks very comfortable. The base looks very clean, shiny. It pops out on the screen when you look at it, and it sort of stays in your mind a great deal afterwards. Also, the animations look very smooth, and there's no stuttering. That's always a positive.
My brilliance may shock you. Oh wait, there's the interrogation chair.
Some of you may know some of the voice actors that are voicing the evil geniuses in this game. Particular Samantha Bond, who plays Emma, the evil former spy master. Then you have the tyrant ex-henchman known as Red Ivan, who is voiced by Brian Blessed. Now, some of you have heard Brian Blessed's name before. It's usually done in reference to his earlier voice acting work with Gotrek and Felix, and also various movies to his credit. He is a very well-known actor who lends his pipes to us, as well as Samantha Bond. Rikia Ayola. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. She plays Zelika, a mad scientist woman with a fish globe over her head, and that alters her voice a little bit from scene to scene, and I like it. I like that addition of warp speech patterns. It adds a uniqueness to her character. And finally, we get the last one. The industrialist, known as Maximilian, is voiced by Glenn McCready. He does a great job with this character. He really comes off as this manipulative, greedy. Let's just say that he has a bit of a Napoleon complex to him. Now, there were some spotty performances with the voice acting here and there, but overall, I thought it was excellent and well done by the cast. I would give them 5 stars on the voice acting. This game has an orchestral soundtrack, which is not only amazing, but fits well with the theme, and gets a big thumb up from me. The sound effects are also well done. They add to the situation. I found it much more palatable fight sequences with a very active soundtrack. Altogether made a pretty enjoyable experience. The gameplay takes place mostly in your evil lair, with the world map having limited interactions, but still an important part of the gameplay. The world map is where most of your gold comes from, and you use it a lot as a way to pay for your minions, build new rooms, and buy new equipment. You can also loot items from the world map, each one providing a different bonus to your lair. Many objectives from both the main and various side stories can only be completed on the world map. It is very simple to set up and send your minions to do these missions. They do not return, however, once they complete the mission. No matter what happens, either you fail or succeed, it doesn't seem to matter. What happens is that you lose those henchmen, but you do receive the rewards for the mission if you succeed. If you fail, you don't get your reward. But no matter what, you also get an increase in heat in that region. I'm not overly fond of you not getting your henchmen back, as I feel like they try to get you to... I'm not overly fond of you not getting your minions back, as I do feel like the game is trying to get you to care about your minions and have like a set idea of what to develop them as they give you traits, as they have specialized names, but you can't really name the minions. Like, I have a whole list of issues I have with the minions, but we'll talk about that later. Let's just focus on the world map. Ultimately, the world map is basically where you go to set up long-term plans for your lair, where you get missions completed and various other things done. The world map is essential to your gameplay experience with Evil Genius 2, as it is called World Domination in the subtitle. The greatest criticism I have for the world map situation is the waiting. You have to wait a lot for things to go off on this map, and if you don't have the patience, then I got news for you. This might not be the game for you, because there's a lot of waiting. They try to mitigate that with more stuff to do with the base, which does help out a bit. Let's talk agents. Investigators will come through your casino looking for evidence to basically increase the heat, your heat on the world stage. So you better keep them out of more secretive places. Saboteurs will enter through the back door and usually try to destroy your lab or your power stations. They're a general nuisance in that regard, so you have got to have like special areas for your power station. It all depends. And rogues will try and steal stuff from your vault, so it's a good idea to make sure it's secure. All of these are like places you want to keep secure and safe. The game sort of enforces that by making these agents go for those specific things. And I like that. That's a good way to make the player think of ways to design their base that protects those spots, because those are their soft spots and they will be attacked very frequently by enemy agents. And you have multiple floors, so you can hide various rooms on different floors. You can have some of your more secretive and much more dangerous stuff on the higher floors so that they're not getting stolen or destroyed. It's a very good system. I like it. Soldiers are probably the worst thing that can come to your base, because they will kill as many as they can before they're finally stopped. They are probably the most destructive ones, just under super agents. Now, super agents are your bond tier threats to your base. They will come in once you hit a certain amount of heat. They will start attacking your base fairly regularly. There's not much you can do to get rid of them permanently unless you do like a side quest that permanently gets rid of them, but you can temporarily get rid of them by doing enough damage to them. I don't want to go into too much detail about each of the super agents. Just suffice to say, they all have their own specialties and their own sort of ways to harass your base. All in all, the super agents feel like they're very disruptive to your plans. But notice I didn't say they could stop your plans. They can disrupt your plans, they can slow you down, but in the end, there's not much they can do to stop you unless they go directly to your evil genius and kill your evil genius, which can happen and will basically cause you to reload the game. Overall, I think the agents and the super agents were done pretty well. They make a great antagonist to your gameplay, and they also put in a reason for there to be traps, there to be like guards, there to be various other things that you use for security at your base. So yeah, agents were done well. Now, the best way to combat super agents and regular agents is with minions. Minions have different classes, different traits, and different perks, and they can handle various situations in your base depending on their specialties. Now, the basic minion you will be getting is the worker minion. Now, What I like about the minion class system is the worker minion can pretty much do everything, but they're not good at anything. So if you want a good fighter, then the worker minion will do. But if you really want some good fighting done, then you will go to the muscle minions. If you want research and tech and all that stuff done, then you're going to have to make science minions. And the way you do, and then there is the social minions. If you want agents distracted and you want people running the casino floor, then you're going to have to use social minions. But worker minions do basic things like build things, build rooms, set up places. Now you can basically train the worker minion into becoming something new. Minions have traits, giving a nice little idea of what you want to specialize them later on in their development. However, the problem with that is you can lose them quite easily and say a all-out attack on your base where a bunch of your minions got killed. You lost that minion who had a good right hook and a good left hook, or they were a good magician and they are now on a mission, and well, you'll never hear from them again even if you succeed. It's kind of reductive to have them have good traits and to be specializing them and working at them. Now you can order them to stay in the base by telling them that you prefer them to stay in the base. I forgot how to do it, but you gotta do it within some menus within the game, which I feel like this is a bit of a criticism, a bit of a nitpick as well. But if you can't really have your minions stay with you throughout your entire playthrough, even if they survive, I don't think that's a good idea, as it's sort of counterintuitive to what they were doing. Also, you can't customize the minions as well. You can't name them, which is fair, I guess. They sort of come off as disposable units, which is fair, but the game also wants you to like them too. Both points, it's sort of contradictory. I don't think the game does a good job of countering those contradictions within itself. So, despite my nitpicks, I do like the minion system. I just wish they would pick either lane and just stick to it. Also, the deception minions, they just work the casino and that's it for your base. I feel like they should be able to do something else, like maybe have a spin room where they spin news, or have deceptions plans that they do on the world map as well. But I digress.
I'm impressed, Mr. Barracuda. You've delivered on your promises to me better than my own minions could.
Now let's talk about henchmen. Henchmen are basically sort of like evil geniuses. They're like mini evil geniuses. They have their own special abilities. You know, every evil genius have a special ability. Like Ivan has the ability to make his muscle minions fight better when he activates his special ability. And he also has a rocket launcher they can use in fights that are kind of dangerous for everything around him. Now the henchmen have their own special abilities, such as Barracuda has a special gun that does a lot of damage. There is Jinbei, who has teleportation abilities. There's a whole list of cool power-ups and abilities that the various henchmen have. The henchmen feel like a nice addition. They add like a number 2 to your forces. They don't go on schemes like the minions do. They have to stay at the base because, like I said before, nobody comes back from the schemes, which, again, I dislike. I keep bringing it up, but it's sort of like a very negative part of it that really slows down the minions and stuff like, and the game as a whole, because you kind of want them to come back and be a success. But yeah, henchmen are a solid base of your strategy when you are attacked in your base by agents and super agents. They come in and they help out in the fight, and they don't die like your minions do, so they sort of just go down to 0 health and just sit there. Like, it's been, sometimes I've had some chaotic moments in my bases where like everyone just gets knocked out, and there's like a whole bunch of fires, a bunch of mutinies, just chaos everywhere. But my henchmen are still around and they still help out. So the henchmen are a nice little stopgap. You can have a max number of 5 henchmen. So yeah, it's always handy to start getting more henchmen, but in order to get more henchmen, you have to start quest lines that you have to do schemes for that will unlock new henchmen, and it takes a while to unlock more henchmen. So I would be very careful with your first pick of a henchman, because you get that free pick early on and it helps you out a great deal, because you won't have your traps set up, you won't have your muscle minions set up. So it'll be nice to have a little bit of backup in a fight. And if you lose your evil genius in a fight, the game's over. Henchmen was, in my opinion, were done decently well. They could have been done a little bit better. They could have been given more abilities. You can have a little bit more control over them. But Evil Genius 2 is more about delegation and just letting things play out while you overlook the overhead plans and schemes. Now let's move on to my favorite part, traps. Traps are basically you setting up little, traps for various agents that are snooping around. Your standard super agent will have ways to disarm your traps or just get past them very easily, but sometimes they do get caught in them, so keep that in mind. Traps are probably one of the best aspects of this game, but I would also say that I feel like they were just a little light on the traps. I know there's plenty in here. I'd say there's like a medium amount of traps I would expected for this game. I was expecting way more traps in this game, but I feel like they might have been pressed for time or something, and they just didn't have time to really just go crazy with the traps. The traps are pretty good, even though they're limited. They got like a shark tank trap where they fall in a shark tank, and there's freeze traps. There's traps that push enemy agents into other traps, making it worse. There's a soap trap that slips them. There's a poison dart trap. There's a decent amount of combinations you can pull off to make things, let's just say, interesting. You can really mess with the agents with it. It's its own little mini game. It's pretty fun. Even though I was complaining about it early, I do think the traps are done well enough to be passing, and I do wish they put more traps in the future if they could, if they're going to do an Evil Genius Part 3. We shall see, but yeah. Traps are good. So let's talk about the various rooms. The rooms that they had a very good selection of rooms. They have break rooms. They have barracks to set up your minions in. You have a inner sanctum where you can have your henchmen and your evil genius just camp out and just sit in there. You can post guard at various points in the base. You can set up checkpoints in the base if you want to. Also, the bases are simple to build. There's not that much complexity to it. You can build some very simple bases, very complex bases. If you're newer to this genre, base design is easy to learn, easy to master, and you'll be making very complex bases in almost no time. Overall, I found base building done excellently here. I would rate it very highly for people who are new or trying to get into the genre, and for people who have been around for a bit. You might enjoy it as well. Now let's talk about Doomsday devices. Each evil genius possesses a Doomsday device, and each Doomsday device is integral to the storyline in the campaign. But they're not just used in the campaign as a part of the storyline. You can also use the Doomsday device on the world map to help you get some extra cash. I felt the lack of presentation in the game when it came to Doomsday devices, which was the main criticism I had for Doomsday devices, because I didn't feel like I was causing devastation on a global scale. I felt like I was just pushing a button. They could have remedied this with a cutscene, or perhaps showing a picture-in-picture of the news where the world is being devastated by the firing of the Doomsday device. That would have been interesting. But overall, I felt Doomsday devices were okay. They were an extra bit to a game that I felt was fun already. While I do admit it missed a bit more than I liked, it still was passable enough. Alright, let's go into the DLCs. For the most part, I felt that the DLCs were kind of meh. Lots of standard stuff with new skins and stuff like that. I wasn't really sold on the Evil Genius 2 DLC. There was a few standouts like robots that explode in your base which cause more damage, so they were actually worse than regular minions. The only one that really stood out was the Oceans campaign DLC. It brought a boatload of new content, and that's pun intended by the way, like new minion types, new enemies, new evil genius, and much more. It is the only DLC for this game that I would recommend for it, but I would tell you to buy the base game first and see if you like it, and then look into the DLCs. But for the most part, the DLC, if you skip all the DLCs, you won't miss much. The only one that you would probably really want is the Oceans DLC. So I am heading into basically the summary of the review coming up, but before that I would just like to remind you to go ahead and hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content like this. This is my first attempt at doing a full-on review like this. I'm interested to know what you guys think, and if you got any tips to help me improve, or if you have a suggestion on what you want me to review next, go ahead and put it in the comment section. I'm very curious to see. So, my overall summary of my critique of this game is, I think it's good. I recommend it. Despite my overall criticisms and nitpicks of the game, I found the game to be a good, solid entry into the layer builder genre, and a good game to play if it's your first time playing anything in this genre before. So if you're new to it, great jumping on point. The tutorial for this game is a bit long and drawn out. It explains, let's say, a little bit too much to the player, but at the same time, if you're brand new, you might need to be handheld for a little bit before you can fly on your own. Also, thanks for watching.